Check our website, radiolab.org. I'm Chad Abumrad. Robert Krulwich and I will continue in a moment.
Okay. You're
listening
to Radio
Lab
on New York Public Radio. Public Radio, WN.
There's still more to come.
Support for KERA comes from you, our members, and from WGU Texas, an online and nonprofit university offering bachelor's and master's degrees in teaching, IT, business, and nursing. Details at texas.wgu.edu. Fort Worth Business's 2016 Healthcare Hero Awards, celebrating physicians, administrators, and volunteers who are making a difference in healthcare in Tarrant County. More information at fortworthbusiness.com.
Chad here with Robert Krulwich. Today on Radiolab, stories and conversations about people who are defying time, swimming upstream in the river of time, you might say. And there's an extreme group of people who say there's no such thing as time, who deny it completely. We heard from one such person before the break. Here he is again.
This moment in time that we're experiencing has always been here and always will be. That this moment in time, as you're listening now on the radio, this is a permanent fixture of the universe.
That is David McDermott, an artist, an eccentric one at that. So he's kind of easy to write off.
Well, you don't have to write him off, because let me write him back on. Very prominent physicists, Brian Greene, for example, professor of mathematics at Columbia, author of many, many big books about this kind of stuff. He agrees with him.
Well, here's the thing. Many of us who have thought about this have come to the conclusion that, indeed, the time that we seem to experience as a continuous flow is actually not a flow at all.
In other words, I've always spoken on the radio, and I always will speak on the radio.
Each moment just exists.
And you will always be listening.
Eternally, if you will.
And you always have been listening.
It's not that the moment comes to life at one moment in time that we call the present and then somehow drifts away into the past. Every moment is, and is forever.
But do you understand that concept? Do you understand the concept?
That's too weird.
It's a tough idea.
Let me just make it even tougher.
Okay.
Imagine if I go, and just hold my breath. That moment, which I just thought up, I think, that moment could last, in Brian's world, forever.
Have you exhaled yet?
No. And the exhale could last forever.
Somewhere you're always inhaling, and somewhere you will be forever exhaling.
A very, very strange notion.
But it's a notion that some would argue was shared by a guy I like to call Albert.
Zu den Menschen zu gehören, die ihre besten Kräfte der Betrachtung und Erforschung objektiv.
Well, it actually starts when Einstein was a child.
Michio Kaku is professor of physics at City College in New York.
He read a children's book, perhaps the most important children's book ever written in the history of the human race.
It was a book written by a German guy, Aaron Bernstein, which
asked the question, what would it be like to outrace a telegraph message in a telegraph wire?
In other words, to outrace electricity. But this was only the beginning, because in Einstein's head, he thought of a different question.
What would it be like to outrace a light beam? What would it look like?
According to Einstein mythology, while normal boys worried about girls and jobs, Albert obsessed about light for years.
Then when he was 26 years old, finally, he was about to go berserk. He told his friend Besso that I'm going crazy thinking about this problem for 10 years.
Bern, Switzerland. That's where he and Besso were living at the time and working as patent clerks. Story goes, one day Einstein's riding the bus to work. And he gazes at the giant clock in the center of town.
It's a very famous clock, very pretty clock. Many people have speculated about that clock, but we found the letter.
A letter again to his friend Besso.
We found the letter saying that, yes, he was moving away from that famous clock tower in Bern, Switzerland.
Putt-putting past bicyclists, pedestrians, and away from that big Bern clock whose insistent ticking seemed to rule the world below. And then he had a thought. How would that clock look if his little bus suddenly zoomed off at the speed of light?
He said, now wait a minute. If this bus is traveling at the speed of light, then light from the clock will never reach me.
Meaning the light from all the subsequent ticks on that clock would never catch up to his eyeballs.
Therefore, the clock will be at rest. The clock will be stationary.
Forever. But strangely, his pocket watch on his person, if you were to look at that, it would be ticking just fine.
And then he said, quote, a storm broke in my mind. These are his exact words. A storm broke in my mind, and the very next day he went to his friend Besso and says, I have solved everything.
And what he said to his friend Besso, it's a very simple but radical idea.
Time beats at different rates depending upon how fast you move.
If you go fast, your time slows down. Not just your clock, but your time, your brain, everything about you slows. And they've proven this. They've put clocks in airplanes, flown the airplanes around the world, had a clock on the ground. When the airplane decelerated and landed and they compared the two clocks, they were different. A little different, but they were different. Now, theoretically, the difference could be thousands of years depending on how fast the plane was traveling, which raises a paradox. How can you have two completely different times, and both of them, according to Einstein, are equally true?
Very, very puzzling, because if you have a time that's true for you,
right,
and I have a time that's true for me,
and they're different,
then what is it? What time do we have in common?
Einstein struggled with this very question for many, many years, and toward the end of his life, according to Michio Kaku, he dropped a hint for how he might have resolved it in his mind. And it was at the funeral of his best friend, Besso.
Well, when Besso died, Einstein gave perhaps one of the most moving eulogies. He said, time is an illusion, that we who know there is no distinction between the past, the present, and the future. It's a very moving quote. And he essentially saying that in some sense, Besso will live forever. Ever since then, we physicists have been trying to figure out, what did he mean by that?
Maybe Albert Einstein was mourning his friend here and just didn't want him dead, and this was just poetry.
Yeah.
But more likely, it was his guess about the nature of time, how to handle the contradiction of two very different moments, past moments, present moments. Brian Greene deals with this in his book, Fabric of the Cosmos.
The moments are. They just exist. And somehow, it's the human mind in each moment that makes each moment seem real. December 31st, 1999, I was at a New Year's party. And according to this way of thinking, I'll always be at that New Year's party because that moment it exists. It's not that it somehow goes away. My mind seems to organize things into moments that are gone and moments that have yet to be. But I think that's my mind organizing things. I don't think that's how the universe is put together. The moments just are.
But look where that leaves us. That leaves us with everything that you've done in your life exists already.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Your beginning, your middle, and your end.
Every moment of time is out there.
You're dead somewhere. You're almost dead somewhere.
Yes, there's no special now.
You're saying to me that there is no time, as I understand it. No time. Every moment of your life is already there, eternally, frozen. Every moment of my life is frozen. Every moment of my children's life is frozen. And every moment of my great-great-great-great-grandchildren's lives are already there and frozen. And so the universe is a vast collection of
Nows.
Nows.
That's right.
That's ridiculous. Now that is just ridiculous. I don't know why. It just seems, first of all, it denies so many things. It denies the poetry of change. Don't you see what's terribly unsatisfying about that? That means you don't have